Central Utah is defined by this scrubland, a landscape of arid earth and sudden, sheer drops into the rock. This rugged isolation sits just 55 miles southwest of Salt Lake City, placing a wilderness environment within easy reach of a major urban center. Nutty Putty Cave was formed by hydrothermal activity, carved by hot, mineral-rich water pushing upward rather than surface runoff. This process created a massive entry chamber that splintered into increasingly narrow passages. For decades, the cave saw heavy traffic, drawing roughly 5,000 visitors a year. It was a regular destination for Boy Scout troops, college students, and local families. Experienced cavers often pushed deeper into sections like the birth canal, a passage measuring only 10 inches by 18 inches that required a sharp downward crawl and a tight turnaround. This heavy recreational use created a sense of familiarity that masked the severe, unforgiving nature of the cave's deepest geological constraints. On November 24, 2009, John Edward Jones arrived at the cave with his brother and friends. At 26 years old, John was a medical student, a husband, and a father. He stood 6 feet tall and weighed 200 pounds. During the excursion, John and his brother Josh separated from the group to explore more remote, unmapped sections of the cave network. Searching for the birth canal, John entered a tight passageway headfirst, operating under the assumption that he was in the mapped route. He soon realized he was in an unmapped anomaly. The tunnel narrowed significantly and began to angle steeply downward. John pushed forward to find a turnaround spot, but the walls tightened around him. When he tried to back out, he found he could no longer move. He was trapped headfirst at a 70-degree downward angle, wedged into a space roughly the size of a medium flower pot. A single navigational miscalculation stripped away his mobility, leaving him fixed in an unyielding stone fissure. John was isolated 125 feet below the surface and 700 feet deep into the winding cave system. He had no mechanical leverage. One arm was trapped behind him, while the other was pinned to his side against the rock. His brother Josh attempted to pull him free by the ankles, but the downward angle and the friction of the stone made it impossible to move him. More than 130 rescuers responded to the site, filling the main chambers with equipment and personnel. However, the passage was so narrow that rescuers could only reach John one at a time, forced to lie flat and squeeze through the same tight tunnels. This bottleneck forced operators to pass equipment down piece by piece into a staging area that could barely accommodate a single person. The immovable geometry of the cave rendered the scale of the rescue operation ineffective, reducing the 130-person effort to a single-file crawl. As rescuers worked, a physiological crisis was developing inside John's body due to the 70-degree inversion. This is known as suspension trauma. In this inverted position, blood pools in the upper body and head, placing extreme stress on the cardiovascular system. Gravity also worked against his lungs, which had to labor to expand under the weight of his own internal organs. Rescuers rigged a rope and pulley system to pull him upward and backward, hoping to overcome the friction of the rock. In the first hours, there was progress. The surface team and the rescuers deep inside the cave coordinated perfectly to move John a few inches. Every hour spent inverted brought his cardiovascular system closer to failure, turning the extraction into a race against his own biology. During the attempt, the pulley system suffered a catastrophic mechanical failure. An anchor point gave way and the rigging snapped. John dropped back into the original 70-degree trap, losing all the ground the rescuers had gained. After 24 hours underground, the situation reached a breaking point. John was now drifting in and out of consciousness. Rescuer Brandon Kowalis observed John hallucinating, a symptom of advanced suspension trauma, as his body struggled to maintain oxygen flow to the brain. Rescuers calculated that re-rigging the system would take another 3 to 7 days. It was a timeline John's body could not survive. John Edward Jones was pronounced dead at 11:52 p.m. on Thanksgiving Day. He had been trapped for 28 hours. The cause of death was cardiac arrest and suffocation. Authorities determined that recovering his body was too dangerous for the dive teams. On December 9th, they used explosives to collapse the entrance and sealed the site with concrete. Nutty Putty Cave remains a permanent hillside tomb, a place where the immovable forces of geology defeated both human endurance and rescue engineering.